guys, Samantha from Jessama Tutorials here, and today I'm going to show you a project using my Starry Night technique and some mint leaves. So to start off, before you even start the tutorial, you want to be selecting your cutters, and this is quite important because it's going to save on clay later. So this is the circle donut that I'm using, and I'm also using the smallest semicircle donut from my maxi set. And also, just before I forget, this is a giveaway video, so please stay until the end of the video to see what will be in the giveaway, as I'm sure you won't want to miss it. So put that to the side, and then you're going to need a piece of pearl white primer that has been run out on your thickest setting, which is about 2 millimeters on my pasta machine. Then you're going to take your semicircle, and just before you do that, just make sure you burnish it down onto your tile, which is a ceramic tile. Take your semicircle and press gently into the clay, enough to make an impression but not enough to cut it out. Then you want to take mint leaves, and they're perfect for this because they're nice and small. And I'm actually just going to start with one right in the middle here. And you want to press down. And you want the mint leaves to be as fresh as you can get them, because the fresher they are, the better the imprint they give. And mint leaves should be easy enough for you to get hold of. And then you just want to put them around in a radial pattern, like so. Okay. And just make sure that you press nice and hard, because the better the impression, the better it will look later. There we go. Okay, then I'm just going to take a piece of greaseproof paper or deli paper, and I'm just going to give it a gentle burnish, just to make sure that that leaf pattern is properly imprinted. There we are. Okay, now the next step is going to be to grab a tissue blade and lift this off of your tile, like so. Then, very carefully, you want to just gently peel the clay back so you can grab a hold of your leaf. And now you just want to be careful, because you don't want to ruin the pattern that is on the inside. So I'm just being careful here. And it might be easier to use a piercing pin actually. So if I'm having trouble, I probably will bring over a piercing pin. And just be careful not to get it on the part where you're actually going to cut it out. There we go. And you can see that they're leaving a really nice impression. There we go. And then get rid of those leaves. Okay, and then we don't want to cut it out just yet. Just want to check that it still fits. And what I'm going to do is I'm just gently going to stretch it now, so that I have a little bit of extra clay to work with. And it's going to widen those veins at the same time as well. Just check that that still fits. Okay, that fits. Now I'm just gently going to cut it out. There we go. And that way we're not going to end up with a whole bunch of pastels all over that pearl white. Then you're going to need some pastels. You can use mica powders instead, but I like pastels better because they're opaque and don't have a sparkle to them. You're just going to choose some nice dark greens. So here's my selection. So that's what I'm going to use. You want to take your favourite colour that you want to be the main pot, the main colour of your piece, and just pop that on. Then take your next favourite colour and so on, and just scrape it. And I will move these out the way. And then gently with your brush, tap it on. Don't brush yet, you want to first tap. But don't be too aggressive with this because you don't want to ruin your texture. Then brush it. And this will burnish our pattern on, and it'll also start concentrating that pastel, because the pastel's not going to stick immediately. So by brushing now, you're going to be making sure that pastel is well stuck on. And make sure to get it in all of those veins. So all of these little bits of pastel that are around here still, you can scrape them back up onto the surface of your clay. And just make sure you do the edges, all of the veins and everything. Okay, then blow to get rid of most of the pastel. And then just grab a wet wipe. Just gently gonna brush over the surface just to remove a little bit of that pastel. Because I want it mainly just in the veins. So if you are having trouble with this, you can try some alcohol. If you don't have alcohol, it's going to take a little bit longer. You can just continue rubbing like I am. But if you have some alcohol, it's best to use that. So this is what I'm using. It's 99.8% isopropyl alcohol. Spray that onto your wet wipe. You don't need a lot. And just grab that, and you'll just find that it wipes away that surface pastel a lot quicker than if you're just using a wet wipe. And now you don't have to be aggressive with this, just gently wipe. Because our initial texture is quite shallow. There we go. Okay. There we go. Now I'm just going to wipe around the edges a little. And if you're not happy with it, you can always go back and add some more pastels. Okay, and now what I want to do is I want to grab my lighter pastel, which is this really nice spring green colour. And a little bit of this colour as well, which is a little bit more of a, I guess, pond scum colour. I just want to take some of that and I want to just dap it around those leaves, but not in the actual vein areas. I'm trying to avoid that. I'll have to brush away some of that in a little while. But I want to just colour around these leaves a little bit more. There we go. And it'll just give it a slightly different colour tone. And so it'll just make those leaves stand out a bit more. And then brush around the edges again. Okay, and don't worry about getting those leaves completely clean at the moment, because we can always do that when we do some sanding later. Okay, and I'm quite happy with that. So now what we're going to do is, you can either risk picking it up as it is, which is what I am going to do, or if you're scared about making the distorting it too much, you can always just pop this in the oven for 15 minutes. But if you're careful with your blade and you just pick it up gently, you should be able to get it up without any distortion, like so. Now I'll pop that onto a piece of deli paper for the moment. Use my wet wipe to just clean up any excess pastels. And also when you pick up with your blade, make sure that you clean your blade because it will have picked up some of that pastel. Okay, and so that is part one of our donut. The next step is going to be to create our Starry Night, and you're going to need some reds for that. So I have Aliazar Crimson Primo, I have Pomegranate Primo, and Cadmium Red Primo. And now we only need a little bit because we need about as much clay as we did for the other half of the donut, so you really don't need that much. But as far as all of the colours go, just make sure that you have roughly around equal for each of them. Okay, but you shouldn't really need that much. Then just take each and roll them into a log, like so. Doesn't have to be exact. Just roll it into a log, like so. Then just press them together, and then roll that. I'm just going to kind of twist that together. There we go. And then once you've got it kind of marbled together, grab a tissue blade and just chop it up. Nice and fine. And that's just going to get those colours to somewhat start mixing together and just kind of be speckled together. Okay, and then just mix that up and press back together. And now this technique that I'm showing you here is a great technique for using up your leftover clay if you have some fairly nice coloured leftover clay. So I've already done a tutorial where it is just this technique, and I'll provide a link to that in the links below because it's a really fun tutorial. It's quite popular with beginners because it's really easy, so I'll provide a link for that. Now this is about, I want to say maybe around 1 centimetre in diameter. So the sheet of polymer clay that I'm going to be using, I'm going to be using some black. I'm going to roll that out to 1 millimetre thick. Now I'm just giving you these measurements because I have been asked before in the comments. Okay. There we go. So you'll just pop your log down. Trim. Now this really is not a very exact technique, so I'm just giving you the measurements that I'm using for if you want them, but really it isn't, you don't need to be that precise. So have fun with it, don't worry about exact measurements, things like that. Okay, so now you essentially have a bunch of speckled clay wrapped with some black. Now your goal is going to be to reduce this right down. And again, you don't have to worry about distortion in this because the distortion doesn't really matter that much. So this is a really nice beginner project. There's no exact things that you have to do. Now these edges might distort a little bit, so just pinch them in again, like so. And then just continue reducing down until it is about maybe around 4 millimeters in diameter. And I'm just going to chop off the end there because it's a little distorted. And that is what you should have in the middle. Now you want to just chop off sections at random. Okay. And then just take each section, pinch the end like so, and then roll into kind of a tapered, almost like a tail. Take the thin end and roll into a little nautilus shape, into a spiral. And you'll do that with as many as you can. Some will be larger, some will be smaller. The taper doesn't have to be completely exact. Have some fun with it and see what you can make. And then you'll just make a whole bunch of those until you've used up your entire piece of cane that we have. And then you will form them together, put them together. So I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. So you'll just roll up a whole bunch of them and then just kind of press them together like so. Like that. And you'll just do a whole bunch of those and try to keep it in this shape. So you might, because we're using a little bit of clay, you just want to be aware that you're trying to make this shape, so don't go make a completely random shape and then you aren't able to fit this shape on it. So just kind of keep this in the back of your mind and just try to form the sheet in that sort of a shape. Okay, and here is how it looks now that I am done. So now we're going to grab another piece of greaseproof paper. And we're just going to start burnishing this flat. And I'll run it through the pasta machine once I finish burnishing it, because I want this to be as thick as my thickest setting on my pasta machine. So I have to burnish it to flatten it out rather than put it through a pasta machine. You should be able to see when it's somewhat flat. That's one side. Now I will do the other side quickly, just to finish up any bits that I missed. There we go, and that just about does it. Okay, now I'm just going to pop this through my thickest setting on my pasta machine. Okay. And I'm going to need to put a backing on this, but we can do that in a minute. Now we just want to make sure that it still fits. Okay. And then just grab your greaseproof paper again, burnish it down onto your tile so it's well stuck. And then take a blade and shave off the top. And because we were using canes, you're going to display the inside. And I'm taking super thin slices. You can see how paper thin that is. So all in all, you're going to waste very little clay. And this clay can be used again to create another Starry Night later if you wanted. So it really is not a lot of wasted clay. If you worry about wasted clay, check out my playlist on how to use up scrap clay. There's a bunch of different tutorials in there to show you how to use it up. And ultimately, I never have any scrap clay whatsoever. It all gets used up. Okay, and you can see that you can just slowly reveal that really beautiful swirled pattern. And you might need to go back over and just make sure that you've got some areas. Like let's see, there's a bit over here where it's a little bit smudgy because I haven't got rid of all the black. You just need to go in and cut away a little bit more around there. Okay. And we're just about done. Okay, now let me see if that's a big enough piece. Yep. And that's basically the amount of clay that I shaved off. Now I'm just going to grab a piece of black clay, excuse me, had something caught with my throat. Okay, just take a piece of black clay, and now this is about as thick as my thickest setting. It's just off by a little bit, so I'm going to run this through on my thinnest setting, which is about 0.5 millimeters thick. Okay, take this. Pop that on here. And then I'm just going to quickly use this piercing pin to cut through this really thin clay. I don't even need a knife to do that. And I'm going to run this through my thickest setting, which is about 2 millimeters thick. And that should leave me with exactly 2 millimeters. Now I'm just going to burnish out any scratches that might have come through on the pasta machine, because I do have a few scratches on my machine. Okay, and there we go. We are now ready to use that. So all I'm going to do quickly is I'm just going to lift it up, make sure it's not stuck to the tile too much when I do this. Grab my semicircle cutter and cut, lift and remove. Okay, so you are going to have some waste clay, but that's inevitable. And now we'll be able to see what these two look like in just a minute. I'm just going to grab this off the tile, and again just be careful not to distort it. And I'm going to pop it on a piece of greaseproof paper so it doesn't stick. We'll just slide that in, see how it looks roughly at the moment. So you can see that looks really nice so far. So I'm just going to pop that off to the side because we're not done yet. We now need to do our backing, which is going to be black. So I'll roll that out on my thickest setting. Okay, and then I'm going to just see if it fits. Okay, and then I'm going to take this really nice texture roll that I have that has these spirals, because I want to echo the spirals that I show in the Starry Night. And I'm just going to roll it, and I'm pressing really nice and hard so that I can get the texture. And it's quite a shallow texture, so it really is perfect for back textures. Okay, then just trim away any parts where you didn't get the texture quite right, so that you don't accidentally cut out those pieces in the next step. Just check again that it fits. Yeah, just might want to gently stretch it a little bit. Okay, right. I'll bring up the next pieces here, and our other piece of greaseproof paper. And then we're going to take each piece, just checking where I want it to sit. Okay. This part is a little fiddly. Okay. Then take your greaseproof paper and gently burnish. And you might lose the texture on the back a little bit, that's fine. If I do lose the texture on the back, then I'll just replace it with a different texture later. But you want to make sure that these are properly joined together and flattened out nicely. Okay, and we will have lost our texture on the back. So I'm just going to smooth the back down as well. Okay, and just going to check that fits nicely. Okay, and now my head needs to get in the way, so I'm just going to position this so that I can cut it out. Okay, then press down firmly, and you can even give it a little twist to smooth out those edges completely if you want. The twist is not completely necessary, but it can add a little bit. There we go. And I'll just use this to pick out the middle. Okay. And then I'm just going to make sure that I have it nice and cleanly done. Because when you have a circle and you can twist it, you should always just take advantage of it, because then you can really clean up those edges, as you see here, which means that we have basically no sanding to do whatsoever. Okay, so now I'm just going to check the back quickly, and to get this off, all we need to do is just gently peel. We've got a little bit left on the back, but I'm going to texture that now. I'm just going to pop that down like so, and I'm going to bring over a piece of sandpaper, and this is nice coarse sandpaper. Now we'll probably want to cut this out again, just to make sure that it is still perfectly in shape, but that's fine, because this is going to be flattening it out some more as well. And now, because we're going to be putting resin on this, I'm actually going to be pressing down quite hard with my sandpaper here, so that it flattens out the front, which will have a very slight bevel because we used the cutter to cut it out. The side that you're cutting the cutter, excuse me, let me try and rephrase this. If I were to cut this with the cutter now, just like this, it would slightly bevel these sides. And so the front of the piece has a very slight bevel, which is fine, but it can make putting the resin on a little bit tricky. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly check how it looks on the front, and it looks fine, and I'm going to actually cut out from the back again, and that way we will remove the bevel from the front and we'll put it on the back, and we'll have a nice flat face on the front, which makes resining it a lot easier. And then spin again to get those really nice clean sides. Just get that out the way with the piercing pin. And then I'm just going to double check to make sure that it's really nice clean sides. Okay. Now all you need to do is very carefully peel it up. Just being careful when I do that. There we go. Okay, and so now you can see that our front is nice and flat, which is exactly what we want for when we're doing our resin. Now we're going to make a piece of wire to go down the front here. I'll put that to the side, and I'm going to bring over some zebra wire. And this is 16 gauge, because we want a fairly thick gauge. So I'm just going to roll that out, And I'm probably going to need about that much because we're going to be doing spirals. Now you want to just straighten out that wire, so I'm just doing that off to the side quickly. And what you can do, let me just bring this over. So you can use one of these cloths to straighten it out, and it will also clean the wire because your wire, when you get it, will be a little dirty. So you can use this to straighten it out, and at the same time it will clean it up. Okay. Then I'm going to use some small round nose pliers to just make a very small loop, and some of these bent nose pliers to start making a spiral. And I get this wire from Farm Mountain Gems, if you were wondering. Okay, and I'm just going to bring over my piece because I want to see how big that spiral has to be. I want it a little bit bigger. Okay, then move that out of the way because it can very easily get dinged. And then bend your spiral like so. Okay, and again I'm just going to straighten up my wire. And I'm just going to use this to start making some very loose ripples. Okay, and once I've done a few, just bring this over, just see how long it has to be. One more ripple should do. Okay. And now don't worry about getting this completely flat at the moment. You can kind of bend it a little bit, but we're going to be hammering it, so you don't have to be really careful to make sure that it's completely flat, because when you hammer it, it's not really going to make all that much difference. Right, so now we are going to create our next spiral. And this one I think I want it to be a little bit smaller, so I'm just going to chop off that tail of wire. Make another loop. I'm sorry if I'm not able to put all of this on the camera, it's really hard to work with this and stay in the camera angle. Okay, I'm just gonna... And actually I think it might actually end up being larger, that's fine. One of them needs to be smaller, one of them needs to be larger by quite a bit. Yeah, that's definitely larger, but that's okay. Okay, and then just make sure that that fits. Okay, and we can squish it a little bit later, but for now we're going to be doing our hammering. Now this might make a little bit of noise, and you're going to want a rubber block and a steel block and a hammer. Okay, now I'm going to use the flat side first, and then I'll move on to the ball point. And now just keep your fingers well out of the way when doing this, and turn down your sound. Okay, so you can see it, this is bent while we were hammering it. So this is why I was saying trying to get it straight doesn't really matter at the moment. So just grab your hammer, and it just takes a little bit to get it flat. Okay, then move that out the way. Bring this over again, and it's probably going to be a little too long, which is fine. And then that always happens when you hammer it. It does always tend to lengthen a bit. So all I do is I use my round nose pliers to just shorten it up a bit by just pressing these pieces back together again. It can be a little difficult once it's hammered because you've worked hard on it, but you should be able to do it, and we'll flatten it out in a minute. Just want to make sure that it's about the right size. Okay. Then grab that again and just give it a few blows. And that will flatten it out again. Okay. Right, then once it is flat, got some stuff from the bottom there. Just make sure that you are happy with it, and I do want the setting slightly off. I don't want the spirals to be right up against the surface, because otherwise the it can be a little bit of a pain when you're resining. Just want to make sure that it is in the right, that it looks right. Okay. Then when you're done, grab one of your polishing papers again, and you want to really rub this. Give it a good rub, because that hammer's going to have given it a lot of dirt and dust and things like that. So by rubbing it like this, you're going to really shine it up. So I don't want you to see it just yet, because it's such an amazing transformation. I love watching it each time. So there you are, you can see how nice that's coming out. So just continue rubbing it. The more you rub it, the cleaner it will get. And the cleaner it is, the shinier it will be, which is what we want. I want it to be nice, shiny focal point. And there we are. You can see how beautiful and shiny that is now. Okay. And if you're not completely happy with it, you can always just bend it a little bit more to your liking. But I am pretty happy with that. I think I might want to bend it just a touch more this way. Yep, I like that better. Okay, and then just have it sitting just like that. Make sure that it's in the middle here. And I'm just going to look around to see if I like it. And then if you do like it, just gently press it here so that it makes a mark. And I'm just going to pop this back over here. Flip. And I'll just gently press from the back. And we're not going to be doing really hard presses. I'm just going to press it very lightly. Not enough to distort the shape or anything like that. Just enough to get that wire print on there. Then you'll grab a new piece of greaseproof paper that has not been made dirty, because that's what we're going to bake on. Flip that around. that on there. And then just use your fingers to go around the edge. Make sure it's nice and neat. Okay. And there we are. That is what is going to go in the oven for a full hour at pretty much recommended temperature. And then when that is done, we are going to remove this because it won't stick to the clay. We will clean up the edges. We will give it a good sand on this side only because we don't want to sand away anything on this side. And then we will ultimately move on to resining it. Okay, and so this is out of the oven and I've allowed it to cool. And this is completely popped out with no problem whatsoever, which is normal, so you mustn't worry about that. And so here is our piece. So now what we want to do is we want to clean up our edges. So I'm going to grab some black polymer clay. Warm that up in your hand so it's nice and soft. The softer it is, the easier this technique is. Okay, see it's really nice and soft now. Put it up against your edge and just run it along. And now this takes a little bit of practice. If you are having trouble with it, make sure that your clay is warm enough. If it is not squishy and soft, you can always add some liquid clay to make it a bit more sticky, because the stickier it is, the easier it is. Or you could even just use liquid clay instead of clay, but I find that the clay does work the best for this. But it does take a bit of practice, so practice makes perfect with this technique. I've been doing this technique for roughly 4 years now, and in the beginning it was quite difficult, but it's definitely one of those ones that you really do want to learn because it makes a huge difference. Okay, now I'm just going along and smoothing, getting rid of any crumbly bits. Okay. Then you need to go with your finger or the side of your hand and just go and make sure that you smooth out any seams, fingerprints, things like that. All need to be smoothed out. And you must pop off the wire before you do this, otherwise it can be quite a mess and quite difficult too. Okay, and there we are. And I'm not going to worry about the inside over here because that's very difficult to get to and it doesn't make that much of a difference either. Okay, so now that we've done that, grab this and fix it into the right spot. There we go, it should fit nicely in there. Then you're going to grab just a touch of translucent liquid clay. Just a touch, and I'm using Kato translucent liquid clay. Any translucent liquid clay will work for this. Just make sure you use a very small amount. Just going to brush it into the groove that the wire has left. And I'm just going to gently smooth away any excess. And now we're going to be putting resin on this, so it doesn't matter too much about the shininess that the liquid clay will leave. And also this is not enough to securely secure the wire to the clay. It's just there to help keep it secure while we bake it and for when we put the resin on top. If you're not going to use resin, this is not a secure way to attach your wire at all. So if you want to secure your wire, you need to look into a glue. That's going to work. But generally, I always use resin for this. Okay, and I've just popped a little bit of liquid clay on top. I'm just going to dab that across the wire. And I'll clean that up in just a moment. Then I'll just wipe that clean because we're going to have a little bit of pastel coming off from the edges. And all I'm doing is I'm just making sure that this is properly secured so that when we put the resin on, it's not going to be floating around. just popping some liquid clay on the top. Just be careful not to use too much liquid clay, because too much liquid clay will result in the area looking cloudy. Okay, and then wipe away any excess along the top. And there we are. We're going to pop that into the oven for about half an hour at Primo's recommended temperature, and then when it is done we will look into resining it, because I don't actually want to sand the top. I think that these are obvious enough, and this is pretty clean, and by sanding I risk removing pastel over here, so I'm not going to sand the front. We'll probably sand the back and sides after we have resined it though. Right, so it is out of the oven. It's still a little hot, but it is nearly cool, and you can see there are some shiny bits around here, and that's fine. And that's going to hold it in place at the moment while we put our resin on. Now I'm just going to grab my resin mat. You can see it's fairly old. And today we are going to be using Lisa Pavelka's Magic Gloss. Now I just want to explain a few things with this Magic Gloss. I know that a lot of you have a little bit of trouble. Let me just, before I start that, I'm using a large bottle because I do go through a little bit of it doing these tutorials. You can get a much smaller bottle, so don't fret over that, but that is the brand. And now I know that a lot of you don't like the Magic Gloss simply because it pulls away from the edges, and now the reason for this is because it is a doming resin and it creates a very large dome. So unlike other resins where it might not pull away from the edges as much, that's just because it's not going to create as large a dome. So with this resin you need to treat it a little bit differently from other resins. You need to start off by pouring a fair amount onto the surface of your clay. So probably around that much. And that is what you would do with normal resin, and that would be enough. But with this resin, it is going to hold a dome, so you're going to need quite a bit more resin. So go around and drag the resin to the edges using just like a toothpick. And you don't have to do multiple coats if you do this part right, but it does take a little bit of patience. Go and drag the resin to the edges, and then you will see that it will start to draw away from those edges. If it does that, you need to add some more resin, and continue repeating the process of adding resin, then dragging it to the edge, then waiting for it to draw away from the edge, then add some more resin, and repeat over and over again until it has stopped drawing away from the edges, and you'll end up with a really nice dome. And so it's a little different from other resins where you have to be very careful, because if you add too much it will spill over the edge. This one, it holds its surface tension very nicely. But I do still like to keep it on a resin, just to be careful, just to be sure. Okay, now I can add quite a bit more resin, so I'm just going to go around adding it equally around the edges. Okay, there we are, and now that probably is enough. It's got quite a good depth to it. Okay, and so I'm gonna go and pop that in the UV light, because I think that should be enough. And if it isn't enough, you can always just add some more resin. I think I might want to add a little bit more to this side. The nice thing about this is it sets up really quickly, and so if you do happen to have spills along the sides, it quickly sets, so you won't have as bad a spills as if you had used a two-part resin like ice resin. So I'm just going to go and pop this in the UV light, and we'll see how it looks when it's done. Okay, So now that it is out of the UV light, you'll just quickly give it a quick rub with your hands to just get rid of any fingerprints and things like that. Like I've got a few hairs attached to it. There we go. And you can see that we have no areas where the resin is pulled away from the edges. So it just takes a little bit of patience and you'll be able to get this UV resin to do some really nice things. So I'm just going to pop this off to the side and I'm going to pair it with this really nice sari ribbon that I have, and I have 6 pieces, and I've done the one side already and I'll show you how to do the other side, which will be exactly the same. But all we want to do is just bring all these pieces up and we want to give them a trim so that they're all the same length, like so. Okay, then grab your pendants and pop those through. And just pull on it to get it nice and even. And I'm not going to knot the threads or anything, I'm just going to leave them hanging the way they are. And then just go all the way up to the other end. And just grab 3 threads at a time. Doesn't really matter, just grab 3. And a little cord end. Here's what it looks like with a little loop on the end. Just gonna stuff that in there, and I can use my round nose pliers to help me get those all in, so it can be a little fussy, and just pinch those edges over. Like so. We can give it a good squish. That's one. Repeat for the last 3 pieces. Get those together. Pop that inside your cord end again. And squish. There we go. Okay, then I'm going to use a piece of wire, the same sort that we used to create that little wire piece in our pendant. And I'm just going to curl a loop in one end, like so. Open it up. String these on, close it up again, then grab a cone of your choice, okay, let's see if I can bring those up. Hold on one moment, there we are. There. So we're creating another loop. And cut. Just attach that loop, like so. And then you'll want your clasp and chosen jump ring. And there we are, nice and easy. Oops. And And there we are. It's a really nice big puffy thing that will be really nice and quite comfortable to wear. So let me just bring that around so you can see. And so that is basically it for today's tutorial, and so I do hope that it was helpful to you and that you enjoyed watching it. If you did, please do let me know in the comments below, and stick around until the end because I will be showing you what is in the giveaway. And if you would like to support more of this channel so that you can see videos every single week on Polymer clay, and I'm also thinking of starting resin, please do have a look at my Patreon membership. I will leave a link to it in the links below. You will get more tutorials on there if you sign up for it. There's lots of rewards, coupons for my shop and everything like that, and it will also continue to support this channel. So please check that out, and I'll show you what's in the giveaway. Okay, and here is what is in our giveaway. So you're going to get the circle donut that matches with the project, so you can see that. You're going to get the full semicircle maxi set, the smallest being the one that matches with the donut. And you're also going to get a little bag full of findings. It's going to have the two cones that we used in the project, the clasp that we used in the project, and all of the cord ends and jump rings that we used in the project as well. So that is also going to be in the giveaway, along with a card with a 10% discount to my Etsy shop. So that is what is in the giveaway, and if you want to participate, please comment below the video and you'll be entered into the giveaway. I ship to anywhere in the world, so don't worry about whether you live in America or Australia. Anywhere I ship to, so if you win, I will ship it to you for free. And also for updates on the giveaway, please do have a look at my Facebook group on Facebook. I'll provide a link to that in the links below, and that way you'll be able to keep up with updates, and it's easier for me to contact you if you do win the giveaway. So again, if you would like to participate, please do comment below. You don't have to say anything particular, just comment below and you'll be entered. And the giveaway lasts 1 week, so I will let you know in 1 week's time who won the giveaway. And as always, I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.